everybody. My name is Paul J Bennett. I'm a fantasy author based in London, Ontario, in Canada. And we're starting here a live stream. And just to give you some idea of my background, I've been a full time author for the last 7 years. I started writing about 9 years ago, and I've so far published 36 books. So the idea here is to do a live stream, answer any questions that people might have. We're just adjusting the lights a little bit. This is our introductory live stream, so bear with us while we tweak a few settings as we go. If you're new, by all means visit my website at pauljbennettauthor.com. We have free ebooks you can download, and you can peruse the rest of my catalog. So I thought we'd start off today talking about different kinds of characters that you might expect to see in a fantasy book or game, for that matter. Some of you may play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and to be honest, role-playing games were the inspiration for a lot of the stories that I write. So what kind of class would you like to be? Would you be a wizard? Would you be a fighter, rogue, barbarian? I guess it depends how far down you want to break the different classes down. Or perhaps you wouldn't want to categorize yourself as one particular type of character. I know personally I usually play either a fighter type or some kind of rogue, depending on the nature of the campaign in question. Having said that, most of the characters in my books tend to be sort of a balance of everything. So we've got warriors, we've got mages, as I call them in the book, rather than wizards. The term wizard is just used in my world. Thieves, not so much. There's really only one character that you could sort of describe as a rogue, but that's the nature of the books and the series that I've written so far. My largest series is called Heir to the Crown. It's 15 books. I'm just working on the very last book now. It's about the rise of a kingdom to a position of power in the world of Eidenworth. Now, you might think Eidenworth, that sounds kind of German, doesn't it? Well, there is a heavy German influence in the world. The main part of the story takes place in a place called Merceria, which is more English-based. But when you step back and look at the entire world, there's a reason for that. They're far off to the west compared to the other series. The other series take place amongst what are called the Petty Kingdoms. So will there be rogues in future stories? Potentially, yes. One thing that is quite common in all three series are mages. So in Heir to the Crown, you meet a number of them. The magic in the world of Eidenworth is based on the elements. So you have air, water, fire, and earth. Think there for a minute. But there's also some additional types of magic. There's life magic, which of course is about healing, but also talking with spirits and interacting with the spirit world. There's enchanters. These are people that can cast spells that enhance, make people stronger, faster, give them increased armor protection, and so on. And then there's the two sort of bad types of magic. We have necromancy, which is actually death magic. And as you can probably guess, that's not a very nice thing to do. It can suck the life out of people. It can poison them. It can do all sorts of nasty things. And necromancers can also use something called blood magic, which is where they pull their magical strength from other people, even though these other people are not willingly giving up this energy. And then there's also hex mages. They're the sort of opposite of enchanters, whereas enchanters can grant bonuses to different people. Hex mages apply penalties to people. They make them weaker, sickly. They can do poison attacks and slow them down and various other things. If you think of any kind of a negative effect you could have on you, that's basically what a hex mage does. Now, Hex mages and death mages don't figure too prominently in the books, at least not as regular characters. There are some villains that show up from time to time. But amongst the regular party, if you like, in Heir of the Crown, we have two life mages. We have a couple of earth mages, one of which is, by the way, earth mages are also called druids. We have one called, in particular, I like writing her. She's called Albreda. She's actually something called a wild mage. So a wild mage is a mage who, rather than going to an academy of some sort or a school to learn how to use magic, she's basically discovered it all on her own. And other people think this is dangerous, so hence the term wild mage. She's actually one of the most powerful mages in the entire world wide north. Um, but of course, at least initially, at least, she's somewhat reclusive. Now, there's other other things going on in this story. The actual series, Heir to the Crown, is broken down essentially into sets of 5 books. The first 5 books deal with the sort of coming of age of a young princess. It's not told from her point of view, though. It's told from the point of view of all of those that are around her. And it's about her ascension to the throne. Books 6 to 10 deal with her trying to maintain the throne in the face of danger. If you like, it's her, I guess instead of coming of age, it's sort of the kingdom coming of age, or the kingdom itself has been around for hundreds of years, but it undergoes almost like a golden age in a sense. And then the last 5 books, 11 to 15, deal with an all-encompassing war that engulfs basically the entire continent. And so it's a much more of an existential threat to everybody. And as I said earlier, I'm working on the last book in that series right now, so I've got all kinds of neat things coming up in an attempt to finish it off in a big way. Now, my other series, if you're looking for something more magical focused, I have The Frozen Flame. And The Frozen Flame is the story of 2 separate mages. There's a man called Athgar. He is a Thuringian, which is an ancient race of individuals. They're human, pardon me, but they have gray eyes. It's a dominant feature, a dominant genetic feature that's passed on to their children. And these gray eyes mark them as a member of something called the Old Kingdom, which rose to prominence quite some time ago. And about 500 years ago, the other kingdoms sort of ganged up on them and brought them down. And now the continent in general is fearful that these Thuringians are going to rise again. So in a lot of cases, they're treated as sort of second-class characters. Now, Athgar actually starts in a small village in a protected region of one of the easternmost petty kingdoms. And he actually trades with orcs. Now, you might think that sounds weird, but I should point out that orcs in my world are a fully developed culture rather than just evil, nasty brutes that run around and kill people. So don't think in terms of Tolkien, don't think in terms of Warhammer or any games along that nature. This is a fully developed culture. Yes, they're large. Yes, they're green. Humans tend to think of them as being savage brutes, but in actual fact, they have quite a well-developed culture. And actually, the Thuringians and the orcs kind of get along. They have similar lifestyles. And in fact, Athgar, when the story starts, Athgar is a bowyer and a fletcher, so he makes bows and arrows, and he trades with the orcs, so they actually know him. In any case, what happens is what sort of gets the ball rolling in terms of his story is his village is attacked by slavers. He's left for dead. Villagers are slain or carted off as slaves, including his sister. And he, like I said, he's left for dead. He's actually knocked by a horse back into one of the huts that's afire. A beam falls on him, knocks him out, and that's basically uh, what happens to him. The story actually starts with a couple of orcs that are hunting, and they discover him and take him back. I think we have a question over
David S. would like to know if you'll be visiting Thuringia in an earlier time.
Will I be visiting Thuringia in an earlier time? Okay, that's an interesting question. At the moment, I don't have that particular story in mind, but it's certainly something that would be interesting to look at. I could deal with the rise of the Old Kingdom. There's quite a few references actually to how the kingdom was born, and their first king, whose name was Eldred, or Aldred, however you want to pronounce it. I'm not really particular on pronunciation. That's you can read it how you like. And this would be probably telling how he rises to power. And they have a big war with the Thalamites, which is Thlemia, is one of the sort of classical kingdoms on the coast of the Shimmering Sea. And they're a growing power. And just like Rome ran into the barbarians in Germany, this is kind of what was the impetus for this particular story. So the idea was Thlemia expands and runs across these Thuringians. And because of the war, the Thuringians are actually forced to work together, and that's really how the kingdom comes about. Now, the kingdom is called Thuringia, but people like to refer to it as the Old Kingdom because in the petty kingdoms, they think the name Thuringia has power, which is used to a certain effect later on in the series. This is the first book in the series, Ashes. If you actually go to our website, you can download the first book in ebook format for free. So you may want to check that out. I got another question?
I do. Mark would like to know what inspired you to become an author.
So I'll just repeat. Oh, you got your microphone on, so you should. Yeah. Okay, what inspired me to become an author? For a very long time, I've been running role-playing games. I've been the game master, dungeon master, whatever you want to call it. For the term game master because I've run different games, not just Dungeons and Dragons. And I've always loved creating worlds. And if anyone out there has ever DM'd or game mastered, you know that you set up certain storylines and sometimes the players just go off and do their own thing. Writing is a chance to have your characters do what you expect them to do. So it's kind of neat to be able to have that control over what's going on. The Heir to the Crown series is actually based on a role-playing game, my own role-playing game that I created, my own rule system, complete with a magic system and so on. And all the spells used in the books, these are all spells that were defined for the game by myself with the help of some other people, some of the players that were playing the game. A lot of life magic spells were created by my wife, actually. She was playing a life mage.
I'm the mystery hand.
Yeah, this is the mystery hand over here. She's sitting off to my left so that she can feed the questions to me. Where was I going with this?
Someone wanted to know why you became an author.
Why I became an author. That's right. I got off topic there a little bit. Yeah, so I really enjoyed writing, and I've tried writing stories for years. The longest story I think I got about 10 or 11 chapters. The problem was at the time I was writing, just making it up as I went along, what we call pantsing or writing by the seat of your pants. And the story petered out. And when I finally sat down and outlined the story, sort of like writing out an adventure actually, that was the magic potion that I needed to be able to write. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a pantser. I prefer plotting. Some people do a mix of both. So you do whatever works for you. If you're looking at writing, there is no one way to write. There's many different ways to write. But this is what worked for me, plotting things out. Yeah, so I wrote my first two books. I actually wrote the first book in the Heir to the Crown series and then put it aside. I had read someone had some advice online, and they said write your first book and forget about it, and then write the book that you're actually going to publish. Well, I didn't quite do that. I wrote the first book. I then wrote my second book, Sword of the Crown. And by the end of that, I had learned so much about writing that I went back to the first book. I added a bunch of sections, changed up some of the text, and now you have finished results. So books one and two came out fairly close together. Um, Other books followed. I was doing it part time, so I had a full time job. I was teaching at a private college, and what happened was we got to the point where my books were selling enough that I was making about the same from my book sales as I was from working. So it became a choice of, well, I'll stop working my daytime job and just become a writer full time.
Somebody said that you have a lot of books.
I do have a lot of books. You talking about the books behind me?
Yeah, you've written a lot of books.
Yes,
Yes.
I've written 36 books, and they're behind me. But I also have a lot of other books I've collected over the years. Everything from Lord of the Rings, of course, being a fantasy author, but I also like historical fiction, science fiction. That's pretty much my
Historical
my
fantasy.
go-tos. Historical fantasy, yeah. Well, any kind of
Cozy
fantasy.
fantasy.
Cozy fantasy is a new one. I've actually just finished writing the first draft of a new cozy fantasy, so we'll see how that comes out. It's got to go through the editing process. Actually, it's in the editing phase right now.
Mark says thank you. He said that was an excellent reason to start writing. And another person says you should turn one of your books into a movie.
I'd love to, but I don't have that kind of money.
Or connections.
Or connection in Hollywood, yeah.
So if anyone's watching,
I think, to be honest, I would rather see it as a mini series because I think the story is all of my series so far, at least. Um, they're I sort of visualize them as a TV show, and when I'm writing, I'm often thinking of almost staging in my head. So I'm thinking how they're coming into the room, how they're interacting, and things like that. So there's been some great fantasy movies. Um, the problem with any movie is that it's a visual medium and you can't really get into the headspace of the characters, not easily anyway. A TV series, I think, would work better. And I'm thinking in particular, it's not a fantasy series, but I think one of my favorite authors, Bernard Cornwell, wrote what became The Last Kingdom. That was the name of the TV series. So he wrote the Uhtred books, and I think that was a really good adaptation of the books. And you expect a movie or TV series to be different.
Someone who's curious about which of the books I'd written. So if you want to point above your head to the right, your right, that is the Frozen Flame series. Then over a little bit, that is Power Ascending. Then over there is the Heir to the Crown series.
Yep. Now there's an additional series called The Chronicles of Cyric, but those are only available in ebook, and they're shorter stories, novelettes, novellas. That's it.
Yes.
For some reason, I messed that word up.
You usually call them short stories.
Novellas.
They're not short stories.
Well, the first one is a short story. It deals with Brother Cyric. He's a temple knight, which is a religious fighting order, but he investigates things on behalf of his church. So when I say investigate things, he's basically like a medieval fantasy detective, if you like. But he investigates things in a world where there are supernatural and magical forces at hand. And if you want to get an idea of what that's like, I would recommend getting the first book in the series, which is called A Midwinter Murder.
No, well,
there's a prequel. There is a prequel. The prequel is very short.
And it's free.
And it's free. So yes, you could do that if you like. That sort of, the prequel is relatively short and it explains how Cyric becomes a temple knight. He's actually a lay brother. Think of like a monk in terms of history. And he shows some bravery and some smarts, if you like, on the battlefield. And that leads to a career change.
So, Paul, you have written 36 books and they're all in the same universe world. How did
Yes.
that come about? And the name of it as well.
So I'll start with the name because the name is very interesting. When I started writing, the Heir of the Crown takes place in a kingdom called Merceria. And Merceria is called that because it was founded by mercenaries. In fact, it used to be Mercenaria, but then over the years, the inhabitants of that region sort of shortened it, became Merceria. And there's a sort of a throwaway line that alludes to that in the second book of the series, in Heart of the Crown. Oh, sorry, third book in the series. They travel to their neighbor to the west, and one of the people there refers to them as mercenary, and he gets lambasted for not knowing his history. So, um, why are they all in the same world? Well, I mean, I went to the trouble of creating everything. It makes sense that I could link them together. But also, I have to let you in on a little secret because all three series, Heir to the Crown, Power Ascending, and The Frozen Flame, are interconnected. There are characters that cross over from one series to another. They're also happening in parallel, though they're in different parts of the world. Now, the name Ide North, as I was saying, I didn't have a name for the world when we started. So we reached out through our newsletter to my readers and had a competition to see who could come up with a name. And Ide North is actually, I believe, a combination of two different answers that we got. It just fit together so well that we thought, yeah, that's a really good name. I'm just going to have a drink of water here.
While you're having a drink, somebody wanted to know which of your three series should they start reading first?
Okay. Which book should you start with? Okay, so let's go through the choices first. So the first book in the Heir to the Crown series is called Servant of the Crown. It's actually the first book I released. The second series I began was The Frozen Flame. I was talking about Athgar character earlier. He features in this along with another character named Natalia Stormwind. She's a water mage. So it's called Frozen Flame because fire mage, water mage, you've got the flame, you've got the frozen part. She does use ice magic as well as water, of course. And then we've got my third series, which is called Power Ascending. Now, where do you start? Well, what kind of fantasy do you like? If you want to read about uh, if you really enjoy magic and you want to see more about magic users, then the one you want to start with is The Frozen Flame. Book one is called Ashes. This is two mages on the run. They literally stumble across each other and then end up working together because, well, I don't want to give the plot away. There's some hijinks going on in the background, and Natalia is being hunted. Athgar, meanwhile, is trying to find his long lost sister. And they end up working together. And over the course of it's an 8-book series, they develop a relationship, and eventually they get married, and they actually have a child who is rather unique. I won't go into any more details. You can find out more about that when you read the book.
What is the spice level of that
It's not
series?
spicy at all. It's a fade to black. There's definitely a strong romance between them. Strong. There's no, other than when they first meet, there's no real misunderstandings or any of that kind of stuff. There's none of the. It's not a romance novel, but their relationship plays an important part in the entire series. So Zero Spices. It's fade to black. There's some suggested dialogue. That's about as far as it goes.
Brain Juice wants to know, do you have any advice for writing a series as you have written 3?
Yeah, let me just finish because I have to talk about which book you want to start a series with. I haven't quite finished it. So if you really want to dig into the magic, this is the place to start. If you're more inclined to things like world building, in terms of a kingdom becoming powerful and having to do with all kinds of things, you want Servant of the Crown, which is the first book in Heir to the Crown. Now, this is the longest series, and this is, I guess you would call this the mainstay series, because it's the one that pulls everything together in the final book. Characters from the other books crossover and so on. So this has got a lot of the, I guess you call them traditional tropes like found family. It starts off with Gerald, an old soldier. He's injured. He can't get healed through magic because the king keeps his royal life mage close at hand and doesn't lend him out. And so he's kind of put in the dump heap, and well, his story goes from there. But this ends up, ends up finding the future queen, and helping her, and so on. Now, if you really want to get into things like knights and fighting and that kind of stuff, the series you want is Power Ascending. Now, Power Ascending, do we have the second book somewhere I can show?
Yeah.
The Power Ascending is kind of a unique series in my mind, because it actually tells the story over 8 books. It tells the story of 2 separate individuals. They know each other in the beginning, they're separated, they each go their separate way, and then they end up coming back together in the end just in time to, well, I won't tell you what they do, but it's important, let's say. So the even numbered books will have a red cover, and they're temple books. So we've got Temple Knight, Temple Captain, Temple Commander, Temple General. The blue books, oh, and they follow a woman named Charlene de Chandria, who joins a religious fighting order called the Temple Knights of St. Agnes. In the first book, she's just a new recruit. She's older than most recruits. She started life as a smith. Her father was a master swordsmith, and she has the same skill. But her journey is through the various temple books are through the ranks of her fighting order. The blue books follow Ludwig Altenburg. He is the son of the Baron of Verfeld, which is in the kingdom called Hadenfeld. In the first book, Warrior Knight, he's really annoyed with his father. He runs away from home, seeking a life of adventure. And within, I think, the first chapter, he gets his butt handed to him in a joust. Things don't go quite the way he expects. He ends up joining a band of mercenaries, but he learns important lessons along the way, and he also meets some friends who become very influential. This later on, after this book, he returns home upon hearing of his father's illness. He becomes the Baron. Eventually, he becomes a prince because he's in line. He's 17th in line to the throne, but due to events, he ends up being heir to the throne. And then, of course, in the last book, Warrior King, guess what? He becomes the king. So if you like fighting, battles, that sort of thing, Power Ascending would be the series. Now, to get back to the other question.
Yes, that was brain juice. Do you have any advice for writing series? And then we have another question after that.
Okay. Advice for writing a series. First of all, my books are part of a series, but each book, for the most part, is one single story. So it's, if you take Lord of the Rings, for example, all 3 books make up one big story. My books are more episodic, but there is an overall story arc in all of the books. And so that's my approach. Now, in the later parts of the series, there are some books that are sort of half the story because of the nature of the story being told. But my advice would be plot out your large arc first. Let's say you decide you want to do a trilogy. You've got to split down what happens in each book. How do you break that down? Everyone's going to have their own process for that. And then you've got to decide, is it one story over 3 books, or is it 3 separate stories with interlinking threads, and what's going to connect them, and so on. You can also think of it, and this is where I really feel like running a role-playing game or campaign is beneficial, because you can think of each book as being a game session, if you like, a long game session, and then the books all together are the campaign. So you can think of it like that, and then that might help you sort of break down the story and how it's going to fit together as a larger narrative.
Mark would like to know, is he going to have to empty out his wallet just to publish his own book?
So,
Can you answer that one?
yes, yeah. I won't give you numbers. Carol could give you numbers. First of all, it does not cost you anything from a publisher to publish your book. If any publisher is going to publish your book, it doesn't cost you anything. So if you find a publisher that wants you to pay money, get away as quickly as you can. That's called a vanity publisher, and I would heavily warn you against that. You can end up spending a lot of money, you won't get anything out of it. That's not the way to go. Can you self-publish? Yes, you can. That's what I do. I self-publish.
It's free.
It's free. There are some expenses. You should really be paying an editor to edit your book. You want a finished product that people are going to read. You want to check for type. There's different kinds of editing. I won't go into all
Four
the
different kinds of
details.
editing.
Yeah, there's 4 different kinds of editing. We'll save that maybe for another session, but you want to have other eyes. Hiring a professional editor to do the job is a good option.
Worth every penny.
It's worth every penny. And you got to find an editor that works for you. Not every, some editors might want to make it their own story. You want to stay true to your original vision. In my case, my wife Carol does most of the editing, and then we send off to there's the hand again. We send off to another editor for the final read through and check, and usually by then Carol's already found all the plot holes that I've had to fix, and
Usually, I find more than you could ever imagine.
yeah.
Okay.
But that's why it's important to have an editor.
Brain Juice wants to know, did you know you were going to write 15 books in the Servant of the Crown series when you started?
So when I already knew the story was going to be more than one book, because it was based on a role-playing game. Having said that, really only the first 3 books are pretty close to what we did in the campaign. After that, the storyline is very different than what happened in the game. But there are elements throughout the series that come from that game. So I knew it was going to be a lot of books. I think I got to book 5 when I said it was going to be 15. 3? That early?
And then we sat down for a good 2 hours and went, something of the Crown. What could book 12 be? What could book 13 be?
Yeah, because I decided I wanted to have Crown in the name of the book. So we have Servant of the Crown and Sword of the Crown. And then, so I got a little more difficult as we got towards the end. So.
All right. Francis would like to know, how do you filter your ideas? And I almost laughed at that question because you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what he means by filtering. How do I filter ideas?
So how do you take an idea? Like, you have all these ideas. I shouldn't say you don't, but you have all these ideas. How do you decide which ones to actually write?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I think I write this. I really, to be honest, when I'm writing for me. I'm writing the story that I would like to read. I know that sounds a little strange, but if you're not writing for yourself, I mean, I shouldn't say that. There are some authors who write to market. They just look at what the genre is and write a story based on that genre. But to me, I've got all these stories. I think it just comes from running games for so many years. I just got so many ideas. And usually I end up, what'll happen is I'll be on a break, like between books, for example, and I'll just want to get out of my headspace. Right now I'm writing Victory of the Crown, but before I did that, I finished Savior. I took some time, or it was, Savior. Oh yeah, after Savior, I did Temple General.
No, Warrior King.
Warrior King. Oh yeah, sorry, you're right. Warrior King.
Live editing.
Can't remember the exact order. Actually, if you go to the website, we have a couple of lists. You can see the books in chronological order, like as they occur in the world. You can also see them in publishing order. So even I can't remember the exact order that some of them came out.
I can.
Yep. So I have a file on my computer called Story Ideas. Actually, I have 2 of them because I was just getting so many. And these are just quick blurbs. I think it's usually about a paragraph. And they'll just sit there and they'll marinate for a while. And then, I don't know, I could be watching a TV show or just see a scene from a movie and it makes me think of something. So I'll scribble all these things down. And eventually I'll sit down and I'll look through them and I'll decide, oh, you know what, I think this would be interesting, and I'll try to expand on it. Now, not every idea works. Sometimes you just can't expand the story enough to make a book out of it. So um, what I do is I just put it aside, and maybe another day we'll work on that.
Well, Thurk wants to know if you still play any role-playing games and you still game master. So I was going to.
Yes, we do. Now
You
you're
do.
looking at, what are you looking at?
We're
You're
looking.
at all
No,
the
we're
games.
looking way over here at all the binders behind the book.
Yes, those are binders of games that I've run. Actually, that's not even all of them.
And
That's
there's
not
games down at. Oh no, I don't think those are games. Are they? Yes, they are.
some of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put you up.
So yes, we play a regular 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons game on Wednesday nights. I'm not running that one. I'm a player. And then I run a game called Fantasy Wars, which is my own rule system, and we play that on Saturday nights when the players are available. So yeah, I'm still into role playing, um, and we're actually looking at trying some other games out at some point in the future. I always like playing things like a Star Trek role playing game. We've played other sci-fi games, other fantasy games. So there's always things. It's really more a case of what you've got available in terms of players than anything else.
Brain Juice wants to know if you're going to write any more grand epics like Servant of the Crown. You might want to mention your trilogy of 5 for
The
for Heir of
Grand
the Crown. Yeah, but he wants to know if you can do any more grand.
So for me, the Heir of the Crown is probably a one and done. I don't think I'll be doing 15 books in a series. Most of my other concepts are either going to be trilogies or 8-book series, possibly 6 books. We'll see. I have a follow-up to The Frozen Flame, which deals with the child of Athgar Natalia, who I mentioned earlier, after she's grown up, because, well, I don't want to give away the plot. Her and an orc named Agar are going to feature as the main characters, and it's going to be called The Duality of Magic. And it'll be, like I said, I think the current outline is sitting at 8 books. I might shorten that a little bit to 6. We'll see. The earlier books are already outlined in a fair amount of detail. The later books, less so. But that's not until next year we'll be getting to that. So
Duke of Denver wants to know. He keeps getting feedback from his beta readers that the reveals, twists in the story are taking too long to arrive. What does he do to fix that? And I've actually made that comment to you sometimes too.
yeah, pacing is can be difficult. You have to try to balance off, character growth versus your plot points. And I think the best way to do that is to try to, look at your chapters. A given chapter has to contribute something to the storyline. Some people say every chapter has to advance the plot, but that's not necessarily true. A chapter could advance your knowledge of character, for example. So there could be some character development that's not necessarily part of the larger story. But each chapter, I think, has to contribute something. So what I often find, especially in older fantasy books, I'm not going to call on any authors here, but some older series, and we're talking like very, very old, they spend a lot of time traveling. And even Lord of the Rings, to be honest. I love the series, all 3 books, but some of the traveling in book 1 gets a little tedious. It's not fast paced by today's standards. Now, there's a lot of world building in there, certainly, but it's a different time now. People want a little more snap to the stories. They want the story to progress a little faster. So there's no magic bullet, but just try to analyze your chapters and try to make sure that they're contributing something to the story would be my advice.
I'd also mention it has to be more than one beta reader. It's a group consensus. We can have beta readers say the exact opposite things.
Yes, that's true. So we have a number of beta readers. I don't know what the current count is at.
15.
15 beta readers. And you'd be surprised how they can disagree about things. So having one person say, oh, like we've had, for example, one person say, I don't really like the battle scenes. And then another person turns around and says, I love the battle scenes. So everyone has a different opinion on what they're going to like. So it's kind of hard to base feedback. It's like having one review on a book, right? You don't know if that means the book is good or bad. And the same thing is true for beta readers. Oh, Carol's pulling something out.
Somebody wants to know if you're going to write any short stories and put them in a collection.
Ah, well, funny you should mention that. So this is a Mercerian Tales Stories of the Past. It is actually, if you look on the spine, it's Heir to the Crown book 2.5. So what I've done with Heir to the Crown, and these are not counted towards the 15 total, by the way, is I write 2 books, and then I have, I guess you would think of it as a side adventure. This particular book, Stories of the Past, is a bunch of short stories. There's a sort of connecting text between them, and it tells you a little bit more about the backgrounds of some of the characters in the series. And so we have stories in here like Beverly and the Bandit King, Haley and the Beast. We have, there's actually a background about a dog in here that features a dog called Tempest that features in the main series. And he's actually very important in this series. And through the help of Albreda, the druid, you kind of learn more about how the dog came to be the way he is. Don't want to give away the plot point. Now, having said that, other books aren't necessarily collections of short stories. The Call of Magic is actually a background of how Albreda became a wild mage. We have a story about orcs. Ergon is the chieftain of the Black Axe tribe. There's a story about how oh, did I get that right? No, Black Arrows. Gotta get my tribes right. There's lots of different orc tribes. Um, how he became chieftain, and he's actually mentioned in Sword of the Crown. I've got another book based on the background of one of the barons, who's a very influential individual, and his story, in a sense, parallels the story of Beverly, who's his daughter. So there's some parallels there with some twists and turns. So I really enjoy writing those. They're not books that you have to read to understand the full narrative of the 15-book series. They just give you a bit more detail on the background of some of those characters.
Lothric would like to know, would you allow other authors to write books taking place in your fantasy world?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't had anyone ask about it yet. I think if I was going to do that, I would have to come up with a set of rules of because you'd have to understand how magic works and how the politics and petty kingdoms work and all that kind of stuff. What am I giving you this? You have the magic hand appearing.
Yeah, I've been told that. David S. says he really likes the side stories. He loves them.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoy them. I enjoy writing them. I think one of my favorite ones, I sometimes try to do things a little differently in the side stories. I have one called Into the Forge, and it's a story about 2 dwarves who feature prominently in the main storyline, and there's a double meaning in the title because they want to forge, which is the dwarven term for getting married, but at the same token, they're thrown into the deep end of a very serious situation, and the heat is on, so to speak. So that was fun writing. I also have a character, an elven bard, and he writes poetry, and each chapter begins with, I think it's 2 stanzas of poetry that sort of hint at what the chapter is about. So that was fun to write. The last one I did was The Spark of Change, and it delves into goblins, and I had a lot of fun creating what goblins were like. Carol and I spent a lot of time talking about goblins, coming up with names for them and how their culture works and all this kind of thing. So it's a very different take on traditional goblins that you might see in other stories. I think, anyway. I had a lot of fun writing that.
Scott from Australia says he's presently reading book 9 of Heir to the Crown, and he hadn't read the short stories yet. Should he stop at 9 and go back and read them?
No, you don't need to. I would suggest, if you're on book 9, I would highly suggest you continue on to book 10 because that finishes the second book of 5, and then maybe go back and read those books in between. Because you're so invested in the characters by that time, I think you'd want to know more about where these characters come from and what they do. But yeah, if you're on book 9, you don't really want, you should go from book 9 straight into book 10 because there are quite a lot of connecting storylines that you'll want to keep up on. And if you go back and read those other books, you might sort of lose track of some of those threads.
Duke of Denver wants to know, how do indie authors start finding readers? What strategies work for you?
So finding readers is an interesting thing. There are multiple approaches to this. Number one, you get a newsletter. You do what are called newsletter swaps with other newsletters so that other authors, readers get to hear about your products. There's also paid advertising on places like Amazon, for example. If you're publishing direct through Kobo, they have promotional offers that you can participate in that are cost a minimal fee. Um, I'm not really the expert on this stuff. Carol does more than this. And the big one for us, of course, is social media. So talking to people on social media, whether it be, TikTok's been very strong for us. But YouTube is, in the beginning, YouTube was quite slow to pick up, and now it seems to be building quite quickly for us, which is nice to see. Instagram, Facebook,
We do advertising.
Reels.
We
We do
spend a
advertising
lot on
as well.
advertising.
We spend quite a bit on advertising, and social media has made a big impact as well. Also, we have our own website now, which
Store.
with our own store. We had a website for quite a while, but we weren't selling our own product. We would just redirect people to all the major platforms. I would also recommend that you consider going wide. In other words, publishing on all the various platforms. Obviously, Amazon is the big one. Kobo is big, especially in Canada, and they have a global reach as well. Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, Google Books. Is it Google Books? Is that what they call it?
Google Play.
Google Play, yeah. And there's you can get hold of what are called aggregators,
Yep.
And they will publish to these other platforms for you, but you lose a percentage of your sales. So it's better, you can make more money if you go direct. We go direct with the larger publishers. We also have print on demand books, so you don't have to pay up front for books like actual printed books. Obviously we do because we sell physical books now through the website. But the real if you want to make a living at writing, the real profit comes from ebooks.
Segue.
Yes. So if you go to our website and you order a signed book, we don't just give you a signed book, we give you a whole bunch of stuff. So I've got an example here. This is the kind of stuff that you would get if you ordered a signed copy of Heir of the Crown.
It's like a pretend unboxing, Paul. Be excited.
Yes, we have recipes. So these are recipes actually from the books. So we have Mercerian pudding. Some of you may know it as Yorkshire pudding. That's fine. Elven flat cakes. Can you guess what that one is? Pancakes. Thank you card. We have a little coaster. A pencil. Let the adventure begin, it says. So that's our tagline for our publishing company, Warrior Town Press. This is this could be a pencil case. Really, it's a dice bag for anyone who plays role-playing games.
Even has a dice.
It even has a little dice attached to it. But you can use it for pretty much anything you want to store. You can even use it as a makeup bag, I suppose, if you wanted to. We also have a bookmark. Now, the actual bookmark varies. This is the one for Heir to the Crown. It's got a little sword on it, tassel. And So that's part of it. But
It
wait,
varies for the series you're
that's,
getting.
yes, it does. So we have different bookmarks for power sending and for the open thing. We also have a little map of Merceria.
And the maps vary by the series you get too.
Yes. And then, of course, the book itself, which in this case is Heir to the Crown.
Servant of the Crown.
Servant of the Crown. Sorry, Heir to the Crown was the series.
Yeah.
The book.
Live editing. All right. So, Mark would like to know, in your opinion, what is the easiest genre to write and the hardest? So you maybe speak for you point of view because you only write in 4 genres. Well, 5 actually.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll let you know a little secret. I think if I lived in England, I would write historical fiction. The problem is, I live in Canada. I don't really have access to that historical stuff. Plus, I enjoy reading historical fiction, but when you're writing historical, you're stuck with history the way it happened. When you're doing your own thing, you can have anything happen, which is much more freeing as an author. I find anyway. That's my opinion. There are people that will say, no, it's got to be this genre, that genre, whatever. Now I write fantasy. I'm a fantasy author. I will eventually probably get into science fiction. I've got some ideas for that I want to get to, but I've got too many fantasy books to write first. So I'm going to be busy for a while with fantasy. Now, what type of fantasy? Right now, it's epic fantasy. That's Heir of the Crown, Sword and Sorcery. Military fantasy. The next series that I've already started on is cozy fantasy. That's a relatively new genre. So if you're familiar with books like Legends and Lattes, that's what we like to call low stakes. Although some of them kind of bend that a little bit and go into more of a higher storyline. My idea that I'm working on is a group of retired adventurers, if you like. They're not all adventurers, but they're all various individuals, and it's actually called the bucket list, which is kind of what you associate with the older crowd. Now, I say older, one of the characters is only 20, but she's a goblin, so that's old for a goblin. Going forward, I've got books with a lot of political intrigue. I kind of like to have that sort of power politics thing going on. But I also like to delve more into the magical and mystical side of things. So I have another series I mentioned earlier, The Duality of Magic.
You talk about point of view for a minute because you have
Yes.
like and dislike there.
Yes. So I write, let's see, we would call it third
person, multiple
points of view. And in a sense, we call it omnipresent as well, because you can get into the thoughts of different characters depending on the scene in question. Now, having said that, this series is primarily single point of view, which I'll probably not write a series in that style again, because it's very difficult to tell the story without, I mean, you kind of want to see what the bad guys are up to, in my opinion, anyway. I did have fun writing this series, but it's a lot more work because you have to get workarounds. You can't just, like the bad guy is going to do this or that, and the main character is just going to run across them, and you kind of want to have that explanation there. So I like to stick with third person, multiple points of view. Now, having said that, different people will write first person or whatever.
Some fast questions. What was your first book you wrote?
The first book I wrote is Servant of the Crown.
Yes. And when did you write it?
9 years ago.
All right. Would you like your books to be adapted to a movie?
Well, if someone was going to offer to make a movie, then I'd certainly consider it. I think a miniseries would work better just because of the nature of the story, but I'd be happy either way.
Sean watches all your TikToks and he's happy to see them pop up on his feed. He says, congrats on your success.
Thank you.
Nora says, do you live your stories when you're writing them?
Do I live my story? In a sense.
Maybe they meant like your stories, or I don't know.
Oh, I guess we need some clarification there.
Do I,
when I'm writing a book, I'm generally picturing it as I go, and I do enjoy writing it. So I guess yes to both questions, depending how you want to take it. Do we have a clarification?
be a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know the
There's a
numbers.
little bit of lag on the network, I guess.
No, they have to respond.
Okay.
Ricky wants to know if you have a pen when you're giving those things out, when they buy something off the website.
A pen?
Yep.
No, we don't have pens at the moment. We have pencils.
Do you have any books on Audible?
We do. The entire Frozen Flame series is on Audible. Actually, it's gone wide now, so it's actually on other.
And it's on Spotify and.
Yes, even on Spotify. We also have the first 4 books of the Heir to the Crown series, but those are on hold for further development at the current time.
Brain Juice wants to know, you're talking about multiple point of view. Is it like a song of ice and fire when it changes point of view every character?
No.
Yes.
No. Well, yes and no. So what'll happen is a given scene is usually from one character's point of view. And in some cases, an entire chapter will be from one point of view. That tends to switch up if there's a battle or something. There'll be a page break or a line break. We put a little symbol in to show you it's happening simultaneously, and that you're sort of breaking that continuity a little bit because you're going into continuity. You're breaking the point of view. So you're going, this guy's in the middle of the fighting, he's swinging the sword at me, and then switches over to this other woman who's casting the spell, and so on. But each scene, if you want to define it that way, can be from a different point of view.
All right, I have lots of questions.
Well, this is cool.
Duke of Denver, with such a large series, how do you keep track of all the little details in the lore across several books?
Lots and lots of notes, and I reread my own books. Right now, I'm writing Victory of the Crown, but I'm also rereading Savior of the Crown, and I often find little things in there that remind me, oh yeah, I had that thing going on. Now, having said that, when I finish Savior, before I start on my next book, which was a different series, because I flip between series when I'm writing, I finished off Savior, I went into my outline that I had for the next book in the series, and I scribbled down, I shouldn't say scribble, I type in everything I want to make sure I mention in that next book. But sometimes there's little details that I'll pick up on when I reread it, and I'll think, oh yeah, I could probably do something with that. So it's always handy to reread your work.
And the most important thing, your editor's read every single one of your books and remembers 10 times as much as you do.
Yes, maybe, yeah, 10 times more than I do.
Yes, because I catch it all.
Yeah, yeah. The common question is, does this, someone in the book will say like 5 years ago, and she'll say like, was it 5 years ago? And then I'll double check. Usually I check that stuff when I'm writing, but sometimes one will slip by. So yeah, it's important to be consistent. Having said that, there are occasions where characters are misinformed about something, so they don't necessarily know the true story. So that's sometimes tricky to get across because I know as a reader, you read something and you kind of automatically think, oh, everything they tell you is like the way it is. And sometimes it's not. It's a point of view on what they believe is happening.
William M. said he just saw a short of yours and he wants to know if you're self-published or did you find a publisher for your books?
So I am self-published, but technically I'm considered a hybrid publisher because our audiobooks were published by Podium Audio and Tantal.
Why did you choose self-publishing, Paul?
Why did I choose? Thank you. I'm drying out here in a second. All right. I chose self-publishing for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gives me full control over the stories. It also allows me to publish the books when I want. If I send it to a publisher, first of all, as a new author, the chance of actually getting a publisher to look at the book is small. Not impossible, but there's a lot of competition. Publishing it yourself gives you control. It also gives you a bigger percentage of the sales, but you have to do the work to promote the books and to sell them. So that's the other side of the coin. But I think if I was traditionally published, I would probably not have this many books out. I would have a backlog of stories. So I think for me, because I've got so many stories I want to tell, self-publishing works best for me. That wasn't really a quick answer, but
That's okay. Someone was saying, Ricky says he loves the voice of the narrator on the Frozen Flame, has an old-timey British accent.
Yes.
Lazaric would like to know, are your books available in other languages?
Not currently. The issue as an independent publisher is that it costs a lot of money to get books translated. And even then, you have to be careful because some things don't translate well into other languages. So you need someone who understands the story that you can work with to make sure that those concepts and ideas get across. I would love to see them eventually in like we've actually had people ask for it in Spanish. I think
Spanish and French.
Spanish and French.
Languages, but German would probably be the first one we did.
Yeah, we saw a lot of books in Germany for some reason. Maybe it's the Germanic flavor of the books. I don't know. So yeah, maybe that's down the road, but right now it's not in our budget to really.
Brain Juice wants to know, will you ever sell hardcovers?
Yes.
Soon as I make them.
So putting together a hardcover book is not that difficult unless you're doing 16 million other things, and that's the problem. So Carol sees to those things that frees me up to do the writing, but she also has so many other things on her plate that yeah. So there is definitely a plan to do hardcover books. Can't give you a release date on that.
I'd like to redo the covers before I did that.
Yeah, we'll probably redo the covers before we do that, but we're going to finish the series first so people can have a matching set of covers. I know personally I've got multiple series that I've collected over the years from other authors, and because they're released yearly, you never get the same covers. It doesn't look like a complete set, so it'd be nice to have them all match, and maybe then we'll revisit the covers and see about swapping them out for something else.
Vern would like to know, he's writing his own sci-fi fantasy story and he's enjoying writing in his free time. What does he suggest he does as a first step? And I think that would be to publish it. Maybe Joanna Penn is a good.
Yeah, so there's an author called Joanna Penn. She writes as J.F. Penn. I believe Joanna, it's trying to remember the name of her website. Creative Pen, but it's Penn, if I remember correctly. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, it is.
She has some great advice for authors that are starting out. She has, or last time I visited her website, I'm assuming it's still there.
She still does. I checked it out.
There's links where to go to learn more. There's videos. She does a podcast where she interviews other authors and talks to them about their writing process. So there's a lot of great resources out there. You can also
Facebook groups, 20 books to 50K.
Yep, 20 books to 50K is a good
successful indie author
for for successful
indie author.
How to be a successful
indie. No, the Facebook website group is Successful Indie Author.
Oh, that's the name of the group.
Yeah,
sorry.
20 books to 50K are great resources.
Yeah, so those are worth checking out. One thing I would warn you about, if you see someone giving you advice about writing like an author, check out their books, make sure they're an author to begin with. And I remember relatively early in my writing career, this guy was giving all this advice. I looked him up. He had only published one book and only had 3 reviews. I'm not going to shame anybody, but that's not exactly the credentials you want for someone who's giving you advice about writing a book.
They could know something that would be helpful.
They could.
I think you just.
But I'm thinking on average, because the book had been out for some time. I should clarify that. It wasn't like it was brand new.
But everybody can give you, spur you on to success.
Yes, whatever helps you to get your writing, whatever motivates you, you've got to find that. It's different for everybody, right? Some people get inspiration. I like to get inspiration from really old, crappy movies.
So many
cheesy 80s fantasy movies.
World War, whatever.
Well, yeah, I'm a history buff, so anything historical. And you can get ideas, even though it's fantasy, you can get ideas for fantasy from pretty much any other genre, to be honest.
William M. wants to know any useful advice for promotion on self-published work? Social media.
Yeah, social media is the big one. Get yourself on, well, right now, Book Talk, which is a sort of a subcategory of TikTok. That may
don't.
be changing because there's so
don't-
many
don't-
others, challenging for dominance in the field. Instagram's kind of taken off again. Book Talk was at one time sort of the place to be, but like anything else on the internet, that shifts around quite a bit. So you want to try to spread yourself out. Don't necessarily stick to one platform. Like I said, we do pretty much all the platforms now. So that would be my advice. And you can handle this a couple of ways. You can just talk to your people directly, answer questions like I'm doing here. You don't have to do lives. You can just do a 30-second blurb. A lot of authors find great success by just kind of holding up their book and talking about their book to give some idea of what the book is about. And it's really about getting the book cover in front of people so that they can recognize it when you see it. The more they see it, they get name recognition.
I have a
and
couple
so-
more questions, and then we're going to finish up.
Okay.
Hassel just says he's finished Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and he's your series, and Witcher is next. So yay. Someone wants to know, but he wants to know where he can find your books in Romania.
Oh, couldn't tell you if you.
He can get them from your store in digital format.
Yes, that's true. As long as you don't mind digital format, you can get them directly through my website, pauljbennettauthor.com. There'll be links in there to the actual store for both physical or digital. They're also available through the regular vendors. So if you have access to Amazon or Kobo, whatever, they would be available there too. Don't expect to see them in bookshops. Bookshops can order them, but they generally don't stock them on the shelves because I'm an indie author.
Someone says, I'm struggling with revisions on my story right now. Any advice to make revising more bearable? You don't revise.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Revision is a tough one. I'm lucky because Carol does a lot of the revising. If it's a major scene, she'll bring it back to me and then we'll work together to rewrite it. But yeah, it's probably the worst part of writing is the revising portion.
You don't do any. Tell
Sure.
the truth.
Sometimes when there's a scene that's not working, I really don't want to lose the scene because I like the scene. It's also hard because, especially in the beginning, because it's your baby in a sense, right? Like you put all this effort and work into it, and you don't want to see it change, but you have to be willing to give a little to make a better product.
See if there's any other questions. Sorry, it's hard to do.
That's right. We had so many. Actually, I wasn't expecting so many people to be online. It's great to see.
Yeah. Oh, Lisa is here, and she's looking forward to the cozy fantasy with older people. My Gerald's old.
Yeah.
Where did you get the idea for a child as a main character in the Heir to the Crown series?
So years ago, I created this role-playing game, and rather than have characters simply roll up characters, I cast them.
Characters.
Or yeah, normally when you play things like Dungeons and Dragons, every player sits down and they say, "I'm going to be a cleric," or "I'm going to be a warrior," or whatever. And what I did instead was I said, "Okay, I had 3 players. I already knew that, so I said we have a young prince or princess, depending who's playing it. We have the royal healer, and we have the captain of the guard." And that's pretty much all they knew about the story jumping into the first adventure. The rest was all going to be filled in. We did do a session 0 where you kind of fill in the characters' backgrounds once they've created their characters, and that helps them come up with what the character is going to be like. And those characters, if you've read the books, are Anna, which is the princess, which was Carol's character actually. And because her character started as a 13-year-old child, a younger child, like she was 6, was it?
Yeah, 6. You always say 13.
Well, because that's when the main story picks up. Yeah, so I couldn't have her in a fight and role-playing game, so I gave her this big dog, a giant mastiff, and who became Tempest. And then Revy Bloom, the healer, was another player, and the other player was Captain Arnhem Castor. If you've read the books, if you haven't read the books, don't worry about that.
Okay, we're gonna see.
All right, this is Carol, so she can say hi. Oh, now I got to hold it.
No, there's a question.
Oh, okay.
Lisa wants to know, how can she get a Servant of the Crown mug? You have to disappoint her
I'm afraid you can't get these
because we don't have a license.
because our covers were created through Adobe, and we paid for the artwork, but we don't. We only have it, the rights to it in terms of book covers, so we can't actually sell these. So I can have these as a just for my own use. I'm not really allowed to sell them. Sorry to disappoint you. Maybe when we get new covers, we can create
Yes,
something.
I want new covers. Will you do more live streams? Brain Juice wants to know.
We're hoping to do a
No,
live.
we are.
We are doing. Yeah, we're going to do more live streams. The plan is to do it every week, actually.
Every Tuesday.
Every
at 7:30
Tuesday,
this time.
7:30. You know, unless I'm sick or something, if I get a cold or something, and even then, maybe I'll just mime.
Just mine. All right, couple more questions.
Yeah.
Are you a good painter? I think for figures, I would.
You
think.
must be
That's
talking
Bryce.
about figures, I think. Yes. So
Maybe one day we'll take.
I used to be a really good painter years ago, but now that I'm older and my hands aren't quite as steady and my eyes aren't quite as good as they used to be, I'm a lazy painter. So I use speed paints, and I'm more concerned with getting a usable figure than I am of making one perfect figure. So I just don't want to spend 6 hours painting one figure. I like to get them painted and done, and I'm actually building armies as well. So for me, it's seeing a whole bunch of figures painted that I really enjoy.
We'll do that one of our live streams. That room's a bit messy though.
Yeah, I have to clean up the painting room.
Edgy Venom would like to know how you find the discipline to write. They find themselves always distracted. Now you might want to talk about how you started part-time, because you did have to write and work full-time.
Yes, so I used to write in the evenings, and I was lucky in that my wife Carol was able to free up the time because we were both working for a while, and then she was working from home, and she would do editing and stuff from home while I was working during the day. And I would, take my lunchtime break, and I would walk around with my phone and record. Like I would speak to the phone and just talk over scenes from the book that I was working on at the time. So you have to kind of find what works for you. It's particularly difficult if you have children that you have to take care of. We're in that sense we're lucky. Our children are all grown up and adults now. But for other people, if you have children, maybe you need to spend half an hour in the morning before they get up or something and jot down notes. Um, Everyone's going to have their own techniques. So one of the things I'd like to do at some point in the future, maybe once a month, is have a guest author come in. We've met quite a few in the writing community here in London and the surrounding areas. It would be nice to have some of them come on and talk about their books and their writing methods and so on. I think would be really handy for people out there to see what the life of an indie author is like.
Zach just wants to say he found your channel a couple of weeks ago, and he likes how you talk about books. He just picked up Serving the Crown. He can't wait to dig in.
Cool. Glad to hear it.
And then AJO 400. He's reading Serving the Crown and his other books. He's just curious, what is your preferred software you use to write?
So I write using a product called Scrivener. And to be honest, I don't use half the features of Scrivener.
95%.
But I like it because it allows me to organize my chapters into folders, and it's easy to skip back and forth between chapters when I need to make changes. It also, of course, tracks my word count and my chapter count and all that other fun stuff as well. And then what'll happen is I'll write. I usually write in a 3-act structure. I'll export an act as I finish it, and then I'll export it it goes directly into a Word document, and then I hand it over to Carol, and then she'll start the editing process.
A couple more questions and then we have to end because our puppies are getting lonely.
Okay, so we'll take 2 more questions.
We'll see.
See, maybe-
Brain Juice wants to know if you ever write a grim, dark series.
Probably not. I've got an idea for one that might be considered a little grim, but I'm generally a more positive individual. So I like my heroes to be heroic and what's the term they use? Noble, right?
Yeah, you do not write morally great characters.
There's very well. Nikki's kind of morally great. Most of the characters are
True.
either good or bad, and you can usually tell who's who. That's what I like to write. So I don't know that I won't say I'll never write a grim dark, but I think it's unlikely.
Hamza from Algeria wants to know how old were you when you started writing? And that's kind of a two-pronged answer.
Yeah, so I'm 64 now, and I started writing 9 years ago, like this actual book. But my actual writing goes back years before. I've been trying to write for, well, decades, I guess.
What was your secret sauce?
My secret sauce was outlining. Once I figured out that I needed to outline, that allowed me the freedom to actually finish a book.
Will you, Steve K says, will you always write fantasy or have you future ideas for other genres? Yes.
I do. I especially science fiction. I've got a number of different ideas for science fiction. And I just don't know when I will get to them because I have so many other ideas for fantasy. So we'll see.
Price wants to know, how do you keep track of all the characters?
So every time I write a book, I have a list of people, places, and things, and it actually shows up in the. It wasn't there in the earlier books, like I have the document for the earlier books, but at the time we published, we didn't add them in. But if you look in the later books or the newer series, in the back there's a list of everybody. Usually it's separated by main characters, and then we break them down, like these are the dwarves, the orcs, the people from Weldwin, which is one of the kingdoms, or whatever, depending on the individual story. So as I'm writing, and I come up with a name. The plan is sometimes I miss one, but usually that's when I flip over to that other document, add that name in, describe a quick blurb who they are, so that I have it as a reference. When I go to the next book in the series, I literally copy that list over in its entirety. I change the text to gray, and then as each character is referenced in the story, I turn it back to black. So anything gray at the end of the story means I didn't use those people in the next book in the series, and I can take them off the list.
One more question.
Okay, last question.
Would you write a lore book of your fantasy world like a campaign setting? But you already have lore in your website.
I actually have lore available on the website. At some point in the future, I would like to print my actual fantasy rule system. And so I might consider creating a background, maybe one of the kingdoms for players to adventure in. I've had a couple of people actually ask me they would like to play, D&D or whatever in the world wide north. And so that's kind of cool, but it'll be a lot of work. I'd have to do a lot of maps and, I have the maps of the kingdoms, but you kind of want street level city maps and things like that for games of that nature. So I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
All right. So thanks for hanging out. It was great chatting with you and having an interaction with you, whether you be readers or authors. And look forward to seeing you again next week. If you're curious about my world, check my bio. And next week we'll be back here at 7:30.
Tuesday
At 7:30. Guess the date's kind of handy to know, isn't it?
Yes. So keep talking while I figure out how to end the stream.
All right. Now we're waiting for the camera to finally.